was exactly 2 weeks ago that Harvard professor Henry Louis Gates was in handcuffs and having his mugshot taken after Cambridge, Massachusetts police sergeant James Crowley arrested him in his house for disorderly conduct. The incident ignited a heated national debate about race. The professor is black, the officer is white. Tonight, both men are at the White House. They got together just moments ago, invited by President Obama to share a beer and what the president hopes will be a teachable moment for the nation. Jake Tapper is at the White House tonight. And Jake, fair to say, never have so many people focused on one round of drinks.
Certainly, I think that's fair to say. Certainly at the White House. So we saw President Obama sitting around the table with Professor Gates and Sergeant Crowley. They were joined by Vice President Biden. For the time that we were out there, which was just under 2 minutes, it appeared that most of the talking was being done by Professor Gates and Sergeant Crowley. President Obama chimed in once, but for the most part, he and the Vice President stuck to the snacks and the beers in front of them. It did not look like a particularly friendly meeting. This is, of course, the very beginning of it, and we know that Gates and Crowley both view what happened 2 weeks ago very differently. And Gates feels that Crowley owes him an apology, whereas Crowley says that he came here with the understanding they were going to agree to disagree.
And Jake, you were one of the few reporters out there as the pool reporter. I mean, did you mention the fact that they both came in sort of staked into their positions? Was there any warmth, could you see, in the body language? Did they seem to be sort of cutting through and talking about these tough issues the whole nation has been debating?
Well, we were 45 feet away, so there's so much we could tell, but it didn't look like an especially warm moment. It looked, when we first went out there, that Professor Gates was perhaps telling Sergeant Crowley how he felt. I don't think anybody there expected that this was going to turn into the event it became.
Earlier today, President Obama said he was, quote, fascinated with the fascination about his drinks with Professor Gates and Sergeant Crowley. And he chided some in the media for calling it a beer summit.
It's a clever term, but this is not a summit, guys. This is three folks having a drink at the end of the day and hopefully giving people an opportunity to listen to each other. And that's really all it is.
The president said instead of anger and hyperbole, he hoped tonight would bring self-reflection and the recognition that everyone has different points of view, a fact lost amidst the hype.
That you lose sight of just the fact that these are people involved, including myself, all of whom are imperfect.
With their families, Gates and Crowley flew from Massachusetts to Washington, D.C. earlier today. Gates has said he wants an apology. And Crowley?
What do you hope to accomplish today, though, with meeting with the White House and the professor? Hoping they can move on and get back to work.
Crowley's arrest of Gates for disorderly conduct in his own home drew some headlines, but the story became a media frenzy 8 days ago after the president was asked about Gates' arrest, and he raised the issue of racial profiling and said this.
The Cambridge police acted stupidly.
An adverb he soon came to regret.
I could have calibrated those words differently. My hope is that as a consequence of this event, this ends up being what's called a teachable moment.
And Elizabeth, we'll find out in a few minutes if that teachable moment actually happens, because we're expecting to hear from both Gates and Crowley.